Welcome to this video on constructive alignment. Constructive alignment is about purposefully connecting learning outcomes, learning activities, and assessment to make sure all aspects of education work towards the same objective. Learning outcomes are about what students should know or be able to do based on the learning activities. Learning activities are those activities that help students reach the desired level. And then assessment is about how to measure the knowledge and abilities of the learners. Competency-based outcomes take real life as a starting point. We should ask ourselves the following guiding questions. What will a transdisciplinary professional do? What tasks will such a professional perform? And what responsibilities will that professional have? The tasks and responsibilities need to be broken down into distinct competencies that a professional needs in order to perform these tasks. If we know the competencies the professional needs, we can derive from those the competencies we need to train students with to prepare them for becoming a competent professional. Let us have a look at what a transdisciplinary professional has to do. Important roles for such a professional include, firstly, being an expert. They need to be able to oversee the field and the complexity thereof, and they need to know which knowledge and experiences are required. They can only do that if they have the knowledge and experience themselves. They further need to be able to communicate effectively across disciplines, sectors, borders, and cultures. They also need to be able to take on a leadership role, such as leading a team of differently trained or experienced professionals. They need to be able to collaborate with other stakeholders. Further, they need to have the competencies to investigate or analyze complex problems. And they need to be able to implement interventions for these complex problems. Of course, many of these roles are connected to one another. For example, in order to be a leader, one has to communicate effectively and one needs to have the knowledge to do so. These bigger roles can be broken down into more specific competencies. These competencies include knowledge as well as skills. For instance, the leadership role encompasses having knowledge about relevant fields or disciplines, having relevant managerial skills, being able to communicate well, knowing what skill set is needed for a task or intervention completion, and being able to mobilize those skills. Starting from those competencies, we select which ones we want to teach in our course, decide on how and where we can teach them in our course, and what real-life examples we can use that facilitate training these competencies. Working from real-life tasks, breaking these down into roles and competencies is a starting point for educational design in active learning. In designing backwards, we break down the larger course objectives into course outcomes and learning goals of smaller units. We deliver forward. Students start to work on the smaller units that make up a course towards the larger learning outcomes, eventually achieving the course learning objectives. In the next 3 slides, I present examples of learning outcomes of courses we developed in the GLOW project. As said before, competencies include knowledge as well as skills. When looking at the word in italics in the learning outcomes below, we see they describe different types of competencies. The first one, students are aware of and can explain what a transdisciplinary perspective on health and well-being means, is about a cognitive competency. It is about the knowledge of health and well-being from a transdisciplinary perspective that students are supposed to accumulate during this course. The second one, unpacking complex health and well-being problems from a transdisciplinary perspective using different sources and types of information, addresses analytical skills as well as information-seeking skills. The third learning outcome is about putting that knowledge and the analytical skills into practice, so the application thereof, and by doing so, bring about change. That is the transformative part. The final one is about students actually being able to design health and well-being interventions. Not only are these different types of competencies, they also build on one another with increasing complexity. Here we see a different set of course learning outcomes with a similar diversity and increasing complexity of the learning outcomes, this one with a particular focus on training analytical skills in students. In this third example, we again see a similar build-up of course learning outcomes. These have a particular focus on problem framings and communication thereof in original and comprehensive ways, doing justice to the complexity of addressing and achieving zero hunger. The takeaway message is that competency-based or outcome-based learning, transdisciplinarity, and active forms of learning are an inseparable combination. Educating learners in transdisciplinarity requires active learning. Thank you for watching. We invite you to also watch the other videos in this series.